Suleiman, Aya, and Tari, all from the Sulubawa clan, with a unique wealth of culture and deep love for cattle, which truly reflects their sense of family. But over time, everything changes with no lands for grazing. Experience the incredible story of the Fulani people. Loved ones they must protect. The journey they must take.
This is the spot, a marking signifying the starting point of the dam.
No, somebody? No, sorry. 40. No compensation has been given to any community member, and no place has been earmarked for their relocation.
Since why they go, they never come back.
And this is where the hydroelectric power dam is supposed to be constructed. But for many years, the story has remained the same. This is the site of the proposed hydroelectric power station in Mambila. But the irony is, no construction has even commenced yet.
All right, thank you for staying with us. And if you're just joining, you're watching Daybreak on Trust Television. That was today in history. Quite a number of things really happened, actually. Today is commemorated as World Statistics Day, World Osteoporosis Day, International Chefs Day, International Slot Day, International Day of Air Traffic Controller. And then in Nigeria, in 2014, which is of my greatest interest, Nigeria was declared free of Ebola by the World Health Organization. It's quite interesting.
Quite interesting, isn't it?
You recall the events that followed the announcement of Ebola in Nigeria, you know, when people were asked to drink salt water.
I did.
You know,
I actually drank salt water.
It was a very, very
terrible experience.
Terrible experience, really. A few number of people actually died, you know, as a result of that. I recall, you know, waking up in the night, people waking you up, you get calls, you get text messages saying, look, there is a disease now, it's an outbreak, wake up, drink salt water, bath with hot salt water to prevent yourself from experiencing that. It was
quite an experience, but I'm glad we've moved past it and we're here talking about it.
Really. Well, we hope that such things will not happen again, really. Now, the WHO country representative, Dr. Rui Gama Vaz, made the formal announcement at a media briefing organized by the Federal Ministry of Health in Abuja, saying the Ebola can be contained, but must be clear that the war will only end when West Africa and other affected countries are also declared free of Ebola. Just like in the case of COVID-19, of course, you need this herd immunity for you to be able to conquer. And I think that's where we are trying to get to now, as far as the fight against COVID-19. Yeah, but how do we get there? People don't want to get the vaccines. The inoculation, it has been received by a whole lot of, controversy and all of that. So hopefully somehow we'll get past this stage, really, because I think that it has overstayed, this whole COVID thing.
And I actually like the move by the federal government to force these vaccines on people, particularly civil servants. And we're hopeful that this move will help make people
Yeah,
actually
but
take the vaccines.
Is that the best
It
way
looks
to
like
go, really,
it's in
forcing
our culture
people?
in Nigeria to say no to certain things.
Yes, but it's not only peculiar to Nigeria, you know. You see that there are several other countries too that this debate and conversation is ongoing as to whether or not people should be forced, whether it's safe to take the vaccines and all of that. But that's a discussion for another day. We'll take a look at the dailies on Daybreak today, but that will be after this short break. We have in the studio Sunday Michael, Deputy Business Editor, Daily Trust newspaper, to spotlight some of the stories that made the headlines today. Stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that they look like the same,
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that. But in a situation where you find that they look like the same,
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that. But in a situation where you find that they look like the same,
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that. But in a situation where you find that they look like the same,
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
All right, there you have it. Now we will begin to look at the stories that made the headlines today, and we have in the studio Sunday Michael, Deputy Business Editor. Good morning, and it's good to have you join us again.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to be here again.
All right, great. We'll begin with the Daily Trust newspaper. Here you would find new heads of petroleum agencies resume today. Recall that there is the scrapping of the different petroleum agencies, as a result of the I would say the signing of the Petroleum Industry Act into law. You also, okay, that's, I'm looking at okay, I'm right. Troops kill 50 bandits in Kaduna. You'd also find anxiety as NSAS promoters insist on memorial protest. That's on page 6 of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. The lead story will interest you. It is about residents alleging extortion as Mambila Power Project execution drags. The writer there says how poor viability review downscaled project to 1,525 megawatts from 3,050. Also, you'd see over 3 billion budgeted for survey compensation in 11 years. FG to spend 650 million on project next year. If you grab a copy of the Daily Trust newspaper, you'll find that on page 5. And you can also watch a documentary done on that on Trust TV. The trailer has been on for quite some time now, and today we'll be airing the investigative report that we did on that Mambila project. Is going to be airing at about 11 a.m. and you can watch that, of course, on Star Times channel 164, and is also free to air. The pictorial there shows you the procession of Maulud yesterday. Also expectations as Turkish President Erdogan visits Nigeria. APC crisis, Shekarau Abe unveil excos in Kano, Rivers. New heads of petroleum agencies resume today. That's a story that is also generating some conversations. We'll be looking at that later on the program. And that's that on the Daily Trust today.
Okay, let's take a look at some of the stories on the Punch newspaper this morning. You'd find on page 17, 264 million Nigerians. Others undemoralished, says IMF. And on page 8, you'd find new amendment empowers INEC to use electronic voting machines. That's according to the Senate. And on page 17, you'd find strike threat. NNPC to rehabilitate 16 roads with 621 billion naira. And on page 2, you'd find Defense Headquarters seeks nod to crush bandits with Tucano jets, laments U.S. condition. And then the big story there, you'll see hashtag EndSARS anniversary. Police occupy Lekki tollgate. Others, activists set for protest. And a writer is saying protesters, security agents may clash as youth insist on commemorative rally. You'd also see organizers reject indoor anniversary to converge under bridges, hold processions. Police deploy massive operatives in Federal Capital Territory's strategic locations. And you'd also find on page 9, PCN decries exodus of Nigerian pharmacists to Canada. Collapsed building kills Lagos residents, 15 rescued, structure pulled down. And you'll find on page 12, APC, PDP exchange harsh words on Fayemi's 3-year performance. These are some of the stories you'd find on the Punch newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at the Nation newspaper this morning. Gunmen invade meeting venue, kill 2 monarchs. You would see beside that, PDP governors weighed in battle for deputy chair. That's South. You'd find that on page 25 of the Nation newspaper. The next, inflation remains big threat to businesses, to business growth. You also see EFCC probe Total Nigeria retires top executive. The other stories there, 24 states shun financial autonomy for judiciary. Recall that there is this executive order issued by the president, Executive Order 10, mandating government at all levels to enforce the autonomy for judiciary. But again, we've seen that hitting the rocks for some reason. In 24 states yet to, ensure the implementation of that. You'd see the lead story also saying hashtag EndSARS, why protest is unnecessary, by Sanwo-Olu. The writers there, please in show of force, lock down Lekki toll gate again. That's some people will say, well, that looks like an intimidation, of stopping people from exercising their legitimate right. That's that on the Nation newspaper this morning.
Okay, let's take a look at The Guardian this morning. It looks like most of the papers are on to the EndSARS today. It's the hashtag EndSARS, hope betrayed a year after. And you'd also see the big headline stating hashtag EndSARS, tension in Lagos over 1-year memorial. Police only indoor virtual events will be allowed. You'd also see police lack powers to ban protest, Falana insists. Protesters to storm Lekki tollgate in car procession. No right-thinking Nigerian would join EndSARS protest. That's according to the Defense Headquarters. And security operatives take over tollgate ahead of memorial. Sanwo-Olu maintains Nigerian youth have reasons, insists on police reform. I think these are some of the stories on the Guardian newspaper this morning.
All right, around the Tribune newspaper this morning, at the very top, you'd find the first story there saying, special report, FG loses revenue, importers grown as $3.1 billion e-customs project suffers setback. Gunmen kill 2 during invasion of traditional rulers meeting in Imo. Below the nameplate, the lead story says, EndSARS anniversary, police on alert, warn against street protest. You'd find that on page 2 of the Tribune newspaper. Beside the pictorial, bandits killed 43 in Sokoto market attack. That's according to the governor, Bello Tambol in particular. You'd see also political elite deliberately creating fault lines with ethnic, religious, communal identities. That's according to the former chair of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Professor Mahmoud Jega. You'd find that another story below that saying 15 rescued, 1 killed as 2-story building collapses in Ikorodu. These are some of the major stories on the Tribune this morning. Let's take a look at the stories again in depth. The lead story on the Daily Trust newspaper talking about the Mambila project. This is a project that we've heard about for as far as I can remember. Some said it's a project that has been on for, the conversation about that project has been on for more than 40 years. And now in the last 11 years, some monies have been released with very little to show for it. What's your, what do we know so far about this, story?
What we know is it's appalling, to say the least. To think that this project has featured in almost every presidential campaign of how the promises from what we stand to harness or harvest from that project can change the fortune of this country or the narrative of power in this country. And then at this material point in time, on the eve of elections, we are beginning to learn that practically there is nothing on ground. It diminishes whatever is left of your confidence about what the politicians can do for this country. And then when you begin to hear some of the terrible narratives about how the same government officials have gone about extorting locals because they promised them that if you part with XYZ money, we will have your name on the compensation list. The same compensation list where the government has spent well over 3 billion in 11 years, and yet the people had received no dime. You just begin to wonder whether we even understand what we are doing to ourselves as a country. It's terrible, and I hope that Nigerians would find time to keep an appointment with Trust TV by 11 a.m. this morning to catch a full glimpse, real time, what's this pathetic narrative.
Okay, now it states here that federal government plans to spend 650 million on projects next year. With this, development, what does this say?
This is about 50 million. They keep claiming is also part of that whole conversation around compensation and right of way. People have existed there from time immemorial. They have farmlands around those trajectories. You can't wake up one morning and ask them to relocate away from their means of livelihood without at least providing an alternative. The problem then is who is handling this? How are they handling this? Are they sitting back in Abuja and determining who gets what and how? Or are they working with the community, even though the community are denied any knowledge of how these compensations are happening? So if this government really do want to make progress on this project, it has to clear this mess. It's a bunch of mess that has been created on its part, and it has the capacity to truncate what is already truncated anyway, to further truncate this dream that has been on the pipeline for 40 years.
All right then. Quite a number of stories here to look at. The issue about the NSAS protest. It's all over the papers this morning, and we are seeing that promoters insist that there will be a protest. But again, we are seeing that the police and other security forces are, doing what they consider show of force. Do you think that this is in the right direction or an attempt to intimidate protesters?
You see, my perspective is we can't pretend to be in a democracy. In other words, we cannot say we are in a democracy and not allow democratic tenets to take full roots. Protests or processions are part of our fundamental right. At any rate, they are not protesting against just anything. They have a valid reason to protest. It's been 1 year. The question we ask ourselves is, what has happened to all those laudable promises that the government made when this protest started? Oh, we'll reform the police, we are coming up with SWAT. Have you seen SWAT? I don't know where they are. They woke up and said, we are going to reform the attitude of the police. It's barely 3-4 days ago we saw another police guy brutally malhandling travelers on the Okene axis. You and I know that in the last 1 year we have seen a dozen of those videos on the Lagos Benin Shagam Expressway. We have seen it in Okene. We have seen it on the Abuja Kaduna Highway. We have seen it on the Port Harcourt Onitsha Enugu Express Highway. We have seen it on the Asaba Benin Highway. And so the question really is it just a lip service from people in Abuja to pacify us, or there are indeed real efforts to reform? The other question is, over 20 people are still in detention over that protest. You didn't charge them to court. You're just holding on to them extrajudicially. Does it suggest that we have learned anything? So there have been commissions set up everywhere. Where are the reports of the commission? You would think the commission would have come up with a report long before now, and we would have picked very valuable insights about things we can do differently to forestall this kind of attack in the future. I was somewhere in England when the last protest happened around, is it 2014 or 2013, that had destructions around major black neighborhoods. The commission came out with a recommendation to say these destructions were possible because there were massive exclusion of young people. More and more people felt like they had no stake in society. And they had to say, what can we do differently? Because it's lay credence to the fact that an idle mind is indeed the devil's workshop. What can we do differently? You cannot do nothing and expect something.
Now, some of the arguments that have been put forward is that the aftermath of the EndSARS, or I would say the EndSARS protest itself, was hijacked by hoodlums, that led to extortion, vandalization, and looting, in some parts of the country and all of that. So, which is why the government is saying, no, there will not be EndSARS protests. Is that justified?
So in journalism, you say nothing exists in a vacuum. The government created the vacuum by not showing sincerity of purpose in that conversation with young people. They took them for granted until that whole protest took a life of its own. It started in piecemeal. What did we do to engage? We just felt that when these boys get hungry and tired, beaten by the sun, they will probably freeze out. And then other interests who saw that the government was not coming in took charge. At any rate, we saw that some of the hoodlums they are talking about were also government sponsored. They came in with government vehicles. They are on record, directing talks to hit certain places, so they cannot completely isolate themselves from whatever narratives that they are putting out there. But the question really was, if they are taking people seriously, it probably wouldn't have lasted. If you have shown real cause that reforms were, you and I can ask ourselves, every time those videos make it to the airwaves about maltreatment by police officers, you hear questions like the IG has directed that XYZ be arrested, or in fact that they have been arrested and they will be tried and justice will be meted, and that is the end of the story. So the question really is, have you and I seen practical evidence that justice have been meted out to deter even their own members from further doing the same? You recall only a couple of weeks ago, we ran a report showing how your items are stolen, you approach the police, and what you end up with is even more extortion. How they ask you to pay XYZ amount of money before they even commence investigation, commercializing the whole act of investigation that is supposed to be available for you for free as a remediation for an unjust action that has been meted against you by criminal elements in society. But what does our law enforcement do? They further compound your nemesis. So Does that suggest in any way that there had been any kind of reform? These are the questions that these kind of memorials are meant to ask. That the things we demanded 1 year ago seem not to have been attended to, seem to have been shoved under the carpet, or rather that you are not taking it as serious as we think. What I would have thought is that on the eve of this conversation, even the government would have designed a platform to have invited these people into a more serious conversation and guide them and have a conversation around how can we have a peaceful protest to mark this day and recall that once upon a time we came out to ask for ABC and XYZ, and what can we do to move on?
Okay.
Now, okay.
Talking about justice, being served. Yesterday, the Lagos panel concluded its sitting, and it said it's awarded 410 million to 70 victims. Well, some will say we've not seen the victims and we don't know what's happening. What are your thoughts about all of
Audio
these panels?
victims. Some would say audio victims. You would think, we all know the power of the media. If you had done this much, we should be seeing them in the media. We should be putting a face to the beneficiaries. And these victims are not just, remember, they are not just people on the side of the protest. They are also families of the policemen we lost who were on the street trying to restore calm. They are also victims. So the question really is, can we put a face to them? It's like every time we come up and we say 50 die. And so 50, we reduce them to numbers. Those are heads of families. Those are breadwinners. Those are nursing mothers. So they are a name. They exist somewhere. It would have made sense if we identify who these persons are, and one or two persons can attest, give a testimonial of how indeed this benefit had gotten to them, and then we can begin to talk about healing from that place. It's not just enough to reel out numbers and think when people hear these things, they become satisfied and they move on.
Now, others are saying, well, the panels, for instance, have a duration of 6 months. The Lagos panel, for instance, went on break for about that same period, 6 months, only to resume and then end the whole process and all of that. What does that tell, about the whole processes? In fact, some of the panels are yet to even submit their reports.
So it tells you, it builds into all of the narratives why people don't feel any sense of satisfaction from what the government has referred to as interventions. And let us not make mistakes about it. You don't quell an agitation by force. The guys who are involved, first of all, most of them are jobless. They are innovative. With the help of the social media, they can organize themselves in ways that are far more sophisticated than the police people just showing up and keeping vigil in a spot. I mean, today you are hearing that they will do a car convoy. So how do you stop the 1,000 cars from protesting? You know what? They will cause a mess in Lagos today, and you can begin to imagine what the traffic situation will be. You can begin to imagine the cost on businesses, how that whole economic sabotage can impact the economy of the country, because that's the heartbeat of commercial activities in Nigeria. So you come up with one way to do something, they diverse another means of doing things. So that is why I think this whole hide and seek, as I choose to look at
it. In fact, I recall that even when the government came out to make the promises that they did to look into the issues, set up panel, the protesters were reluctant about leaving the streets.
Yes.
Because of these same issues that, look, if we leave the streets, we are not going to see the actions that we are demanding. And lo and behold, it's true, And so, would you say that this is, further widening the trust deficit, that has been lacking?
You basically have captured it perfectly. That trust deficit had continued to widen. This government, including previous government, have been, or rather the actions of previous government leading into this government have created a very grave trust deficit, and it continues to widen. Every time, especially when you come up to say things you know from day one you are not committed to. Some of the reforms that these people have talked about really doesn't even have to do with giving them anything. We just want the police to change their attitude. How is that difficult? How is how the average Nigerian really doesn't want to have anything to do with the police. Really. If you have an issue with somebody that will require some kind of intervention, if you think of what it will cost you to approach the police, you would rather just bear the cost, bear the brunt, and walk away.
Right.
Because what they do every time you approach them is complicate your situation. How is asking for that kind of reform such a big thing? They are not asking you to give them stipends. So it's about having an institution that works for us. It's about having the confidence to approach an institution and, having the confidence to say, because I have taken this step, I will get justice. Several people have complaints about what is supposed to be a simple thing becoming very complex simply because you introduce law enforcement into it. These are the kind of reforms that people are asking about. Do you know how sometimes you are driving in the night and the moment you sight a police, you become worried rather than being calm?
Yes.
It's terrible. Well, many would say the NSAS protest is a game changer for the Nigerian youth. Do you think we hope to see that kind of energy in 2023 as we go to the polls?
Whilst I agree to an extent, we are still lacking the kind of leadership that would transcend into that kind of game-changing movement. And I say it is true because everywhere where we see good governance, it is not because the politician wants to give the people anything good. They are really not interested in your welfare, I'm sorry to say. Everywhere we have seen good governance, in recent times in Asia, in the Middle East, in the West, is because of active citizenry.
Right.
It's people knowing their right and asking for it and insisting on it. What the average Asian or Westerner would not take from its government, you give it to us, we swallow it as if nothing has happened. You push people to the wall, they break the wall and continue to move back. So you begin to wonder, where is our elastic limit? But what the NSAS did was, if we indeed want to mobilize our capacity as young people, it is possible. These tools are there, they are not expensive. The whole mobilization happened over Twitter and Facebook and WhatsApp. So if you want to mobilize for a good cause, it is really not difficult. And most importantly, we also have the numbers. You are talking about 60 million youth. The president barely won 15 million votes, youth inclusive, to be in power. Do you know what we can do with an active, well-mobilized, well-sensitized 30 million youth votes in this country? It would change the narrative. But the question is, are we willing to do that? I think we spend more time doing Z-World, Big Brother Nigeria, and discussing other frivolities than rather do things that affect our future.
All right. Now, I think we have a clip of, the NSAS protest from last year. We'll do a throwback to just, take a look at some of the things that happened, during that protest. Take a look at this.
Cannot make it up. Answers now! Answers now! We are journalists. Answers now! Answers now!
Well, that's a video of, the events that happened during the EndSARS protest. Well, today, 20th of October, marks 1 year since the hashtag EndSARS protest. What is the aftermath of the protest? Let's take a look at what we know so far.
Yeah, the national protest made the following demands. 1, immediate release of all arrested protesters. 2nd, justice for all deceased victims of police brutality and appropriate compensations for their families. 3rd, setting up an independent body to oversee the investigation and prosecution of all reported police misconduct within the period of 10 days. And then 4thly, carrying out psychological evaluation and retaining of all disbanded SARS operatives before they can be deployed, and that this should be verified by an independent body. And then the 5th recommendation, or I would say the demand, is that government should increase police salary and they should adequately compensate for protecting lives and property of the citizens. These are some of the demands that were made.
Now, with the proceedings, the Lagos State Judicial Panel of Inquiry into the EndSARS Lekki shooting came to an end on Monday, with the panel awarding 148.2 million as compensation to 23 victims of police brutality. Now, the panel had previously awarded a total of 262 million as compensation to 47 petitioners. With the new compensations, a total of 410.2 million had been given to 70 petitioners as compensation. The panel also said it will submit its findings, which include individual petitions on the incident, to the state government and recommend compensation to the petitioners. 1 year on, reports reveal that there is heavy police presence on the streets of Lagos.
Now let's take a look at the panels set up in other states. In Enugu State, the 8-man judicial panel of inquiry on police brutality and related cases has not concluded its assignment. As of July, the panel received about 145 petitions, out of which 45 had either been adopted conclusively or referred to the administrative panel of inquiry arising from the EndSARS protest.
The Christopher Ubra-led panel of inquiry on police brutality in Taraba State has awarded a total of 509 million to 42 victims of police brutality. The panel awarded 15 million each to those who suffered permanent incapacitation in the hands of the police, while those who were unlawfully arrested, tortured, detained or extorted were awarded between 3 and 8 million each, depending on the gravity of the brutality. However, the panel has not been able to tidy up its report due to paucity of funds. As such, none of the victims has gotten the compensation.
The Abia State hashtag EndSARS Judicial Panel of Inquiry has completed public sitting, and members sat every Tuesday and Wednesday throughout the duration of the assignment and attended to 86 petitions filed before them. And of course, the Imo State panel submitted report recommended 770.9 million as compensation. And in Imo State, the judicial panel headed by Justice Florence Duoroha Igwe sat between November 3rd, 2021 and May 4th, 2021. The chairman recently submitted the report of the panel to Governor Hope Uzodinma, recommending that 770,985,800 million naira should be paid to victims of police brutality in the state as compensation. The panel received a total of 145 petitions and 9 memoranda. 45 of the petitions were related to death, while 9 petitions had to do with permanent disability. 14 petitions were struck out for want of jurisdiction. 3 were struck out for being sub judice, while 18 others were struck out for various reasons. 8 petitions were dismissed, 2 recommended for apology, while 102 were successfully heard.
Well, in Ekiti State, the Judicial Panel of Inquiry into Human Rights Violation by Police Officers received a total of 85 petitions between November 2nd, 2020 and December 4th, 2020. Out of these petitions, the panel recommended that 50 of the petitioners who suffered various forms of abuse ranging from loss of life to physical injury, trauma and loss of property be compensated. The panel struck out 24 cases that it considered inadmissible for lack of jurisdiction or lack of diligent prosecution.
Now, Ondo State Governor Oluwarotimi Akeredolu set up a judicial panel of inquiry to investigate allegations of police brutality and other matters in the state. Although the panel submitted its report to the state government in May, the victims who were able to prove their cases are yet to receive their various compensations recommended by the panel.
In Osun State, Governor Boyega Ayetola inaugurated the panel of inquiry on police brutality, human rights violations and related extrajudiciary killings on October 23rd, 2020. Justice Akin Oladimeji, the head of the 12-man panel, its chairman, Justice Oladimeji, had revealed that it entertained 34 petitions. Out of the 34 petitions, 11 of them were struck out due to incompetence or lack of diligent prosecution. In the other 23 cases, parties gave evidence in them, and counsel representing the parties to all cases have been concluded.
So, well, with all of the recommendations that we've seen, from the report, we have seen now one, just like we've said earlier, paucity of funds is even stopping some states like Taraba from filing, their own report. And aside from all of that, one thing that I did not see is the arrests that have been made of police officers. How many police officers have been arrested and how many have been convicted, from these investigations of the panel? That is not, we can't find that anywhere.
That's inclusive of the demands that were made. You just needed to even be checking those demands as you were mentioning them. They just come off as standing the moment you mention them, including what is supposed to be an increase in the welfare of the police itself. So it's a pathetic case, and you just need to look at or rather review some of the things you have said to understand why these people chose to mark an anniversary. If they had seen some serious progress being made, I doubt they would have been talking of an anniversary in the manner of going to the street rather than what more can we do? How else can we better the circumstances? So it's for Lagos, it's even serious about it, but it took a whopping 1 year to do. And so you begin to imagine, like we said from the beginning, whether the intents were right, whether they were serious about indeed reforming the police for the good of even the police themselves and the people, because the conditions under which some of those policemen serve is pathetic, and you cannot expect somebody who serve under such unwholesome circumstances to in any way behave civil to the persons he is supposed to protect. It's difficult. It's a mismatch, really.
It's appalling. Recently, during my trip, I'll just cite this as an example. During my trip, to Lagos, you see the way sometimes even security officials, some of them, the way they behave, you wonder whether to even relate with an Agbero or with them, which one is even much better, and sometimes you see some elements of some kind of connivance, between even the Agberos and some of the, security officials and all of that.
Absolutely. Talking about that, I was standing at the point, also in Lagos at the weekend, and you know what the policeman did? They deliberately vandalized the no U-turn sign and went and hid themselves a few miles away from where they expect that the lack of sign would have led you to drive the wrong way. And the moment you negotiate that turn, about 5 or 6 of them show up to climb down on you, and there is nothing you say in this world that will save you. And the argument is there is no U-turn. I say, but there has always been. And the moment they catch you, they go and show you the vandalized pole on the floor. So you begin to wonder how you were supposed to see something on the floor stopping you from making a U-turn at a point. So I was around that place. I had observed it, and I was saying to myself, what is leading to this fracas? Until they catch, and I observed carefully how they had to lead someone. They say, come and read it, see, it's here. It's you people that drove over this thing and vandalized it. But everybody should know that this place is a no U-turn zone. So the question really is, are you interested in people not committing the crime by guiding them on the path of what is right, or rather enjoy the act of leading people, as it were, into the crime so that you can extort them? It's unfortunate.
It's really sad.
Thank you so much for coming on the show this morning. We have been speaking to Sunday Michael, Deputy Business Editor, Daily Trust. We're going to take a quick break now. When we come back, we're going to start our first discussion on the show. Stay with us.
Suleiman, Aya, and Tari, all from the Sulubawa clan, with a unique wealth of culture and deep love for cattle, which truly reflects their sense of family. But over time, everything changes with no lands for grazing. Experience the incredible story of the Fulani people, loved ones they must protect, the journey they must take.
This is the spot, a marking signifying the starting point of the dam.
No Chomri, no Sare, 40. No compensation has been given to any community member, and no place has been earmarked for their relocation.
Since why they go, they never come back.
And this is where the hydroelectric power dam is supposed to be constructed. But for many years, the story has remained the same. This is the site of the proposed hydroelectric power station in Mambila. But the irony is, no construction has even commenced yet.
African fabric is finding its way to the global stage. But Nigeria is losing out on big textile spenders as the local industry faces imminent extinction.
Behind me is the Arewa Textile Mill, established in 1963 and eventually closed down in 2004.
From over 180 textile mills in the 70s, only about 25 mills now operate at less than 40% capacity.
I'm an employee of Arewa Textile PLC before it closed. After a month, I was just like a madman.
In a day, they laid off 4,500.
The once thriving sector struggles to compete with an annual import of $4 billion.
Smuggling is the order of the day.
For manufacturers, we cannot compete.
We visit the nation's textile hubs to seek answers to why the sector has failed to return to its glory days despite government's intervention.
Get latest updates on current topical issues and breaking news by downloading the Trust TV mobile app on your Android devices. Go online, click Google Play Store, search Trust TV, install the app, and get doses of unfiltered information on happenings all over the world in your pocket. Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Nice to see you, sir. You got a 10-year-old son, a 12-year-old son. He's a chill boy. Yeah. And how did he get to that stage? You allowed it to happen. You allowed it to fester. It's like a cancer.
It's a failure of the family, a failure of the society, and a failure of governance.
We are still going into some other hideouts to see if any apprehensions will be made tonight.
To operate within the context of the law with much respect to human rights.
Suleiman, Aya, and Tari, all from the Sulubawa clan, with a unique wealth of culture and deep love for cattle, which truly reflects their sense of family. But over time, everything changes with no lands for grazing. Experience the incredible story of the Fulani people. Loved ones they must protect. The journey they must take.
Welcome back. You are still watching Daybreak on Trust Television. Now let's move on to our first discussion segment on the show. The federal government disclosed on Monday that the Department of Petroleum Resources, the Petroleum Products Pricing Regulatory Agency, and the Petroleum Equalization Fund are all officially scrapped and do not exist anymore. It also said while workers of the three agencies will be protected, their chief executives had been relieved of their various appointments.
Now, the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Timipre Silva, stated this while speaking on the sidelines of the inauguration of the boards of the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority and the Nigerian Upstream Regulatory Commission in Abuja. He explained that with the passage of the Petroleum Industry Act, the NPRA and NURC had taken over the functions of the DPR, PPPRA and PEF. He said competent hands were now handling the business, adding that Nigerians should brace up for exponential growth in the oil and gas sector. To discuss this, we have energy and crude oil expert, Engineer Yabagi Yusuf, in the studio to discuss this. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Show.
Thank you.
It's good to have you. Now, this PIA is one of the bills that have been a bill that has lingered for quite a while before it eventually passed. At least over 20 years, we know so far. Now that it has been passed, we are seeing changes are going to be made, definitely, beginning with the scrapping of some of these agencies. How is this going to impact on the oil and gas industry?
Well, let me first of all congratulate Mr. President, for this historical milestone, in the growth of the oil and gas industry in Nigeria. It has been the bane, in the development of the oil and gas industry. The fact that we didn't have what you can call international best practice regulatory, environment where the international best practice will take place. So, in that line, what Mr. President has done is quite commendable, and I think history, generations unborn will appreciate him for doing that, because what it has done is to save Nigeria amount of looting that you will never believe is taking place. So, but again, yes, it's good to pass a piece of legislation, to give accent, which Mr. President has done, but there is a lot that is yet to be done for us to really get to the intention of the PIA, which means you want to have transparency, accountability, good governance in the operations of the oil and gas sector in Nigeria, so that the billions of dollars that accrue from that sector would become something that will be available to Nigeria to use, to even avoid, taking loans like, we are doing now. If we are benefiting from the resources, from that sector, believe you me, others would have to come to Nigeria to ask for loan. It's not Nigeria going to ask for loan. What am I saying? This is a sector that contributes more than 90% of our foreign exchange earning, in this country. This is a sector that has so many backward and forward linkages with other sectors of the economy. When you talk about GDP, yes, the sector itself contributes less than 10%, to GDP, but because of its linkages with other sectors of the economy, it contributes, we look at agriculture, you look at service industry like banking and things like that contributes almost 70% of GDP. Without oil and gas sector, those industries will not be as active as they are. So you can now see how intertwined, the oil and gas industry is with the economy of this country and the future of this country. So, yes, we want to commend those that today have been the proscription of those agencies, DPR, PPRA, PEF, PEF, and then now they are subsumed under the new two regulatory agencies. But the question you ask is, how much has really changed? Because these are the same individuals who were running this industry prior to the passing of the PIA. What has changed? Has the environment changed? To me and to those who are keen observers of what is happening in that industry, believe you me, we are worse off. Do you know why I say so?
How we?
We are worse off in the sense that the whole essence, the whole principle of PIA, like I said, is accountability, transparency, and good governance, isn't it? So now, accountability cannot take place unless you have what you call checks and balances, and accountability cannot take place, transparency cannot take place unless you observe the principle of civil service, which says that no agency of the government can start a business transaction and end it without another agency of government coming to check what that agency is doing. I have no qualms or anything to against the prosecution of DPR, PPRA, PEF. But what about the other agencies that today were outlawed by this PIA? Agencies like Waste and Measures Department, like Commodity Export Department. Why am I mentioning them? Waste and Measures, that's an act, of the Law of Federation of Nigeria, 2004. They call it the Act W3. That's Waste and Measures Act, which says that before you use any instrument for measurement to transact business in Nigeria, you have to subject it to the tests of these departments. That is the Waste and Measures Department, meaning that it has to become legal, and then after they checked it, it will become accurate, then it will be fair. So now today, you said by the law that has been passed, Waste and Measures Department has no role in that sector again. Commodity Export Department has no role, and there are some other agencies that specifically the bill says that their functions will cease with the coming of PIA. So what have you done? You have murdered transparency, accountability, and the good governance you are talking about prior to the passing of this bill. And the bane of our development in this country is corruption. So we have a situation that we are trying to change, which means there was no good governance, there's no transparency. Corruption is the order of the day in the oil and gas sector. We all know that. And then you now come up with a bill that tells us that they are introducing accountability and transparency, and then you now remove checks and balances. You don't want any agency of government to know what you are doing. So the issue of, and I remember when Dr. Ronald Kuman of blessed memory was talking about this PI, because they brought it into during President Obasanjo's regime. They were talking about making that the industry is opaque as it is today. So with this PIA, it will become open to Nigerians to know what is happening, and the culture of transparency, accountability will be entrenched. Today we woke up to meet a bill that has in fact completely made a nonsense of that.
So are you saying that these new commissions these new regulatory commissions that are coming on board do not have these departments that are supposedly going to check these excesses that you have mentioned?
No, they may have the departments, but that is for their own purpose. Nobody says that the industry should not regulate itself for its own purpose. You must do that. But internationally, Waste and Measures Act is an international law. It's not peculiar to Nigeria. Every country implements Waste and Measures, what you call legal metrology. Legal metrology is an international order of the economy that you must obey. Every sector of the economy. All other regulatory agencies are subject to the checking and the certification of these agencies of the government, which the constitution of this country put in place. It is a constitutional matter, and to even again, model of things, you did not go to amend the Waste and Measures Act. You didn't even repeal it or amend that act. So which means we are now assigning one function to two agencies of government. What are you calling for? Crisis? And going forward, I'm not saying that they don't have, they don't have the rights to check the meters for themselves. for their own sake, for their own whatever it means. But you can't say that an act of constitution, an act of parliament, shall cease because you now have another act, and you didn't go to repeal the other one or amend that one. So you must have something, an agenda that is not transparent, that is not axiomatic. It's not something that is in the interest of this country. Otherwise, you would have enhanced and then promoted, what you have in the place of accountability, which is checks and balances. It's a very simple logic. There's nothing that is complicated here.
But Timi Silva mentioned, I remember vividly in an interview, that the law has already repealed those acts.
No, you can't. You can't repeal Waste and Measures Act law. Internationally, I'm telling you that the Waste and Measures Act, has what you call traceability. They have what you call a standard, primary standard. Every country has a primary standard against which you check the measuring instruments in that economy, so that everybody would be working towards the same measurement, the same accuracy. And their own primary standard is traceable to the primary standard, the international standard, which is in Paris. Every country has a standard which is called primary standard. Every country. So there's no country, a sensible country, that will say we are prescribing Waste and Measures law. In fact, before this time, it was a punishable. If you violate the Waste and Measures law, like in Britain or what have you, you could be killed, really.
So this Waste and Measures law, is it binding by virtue of our constitution or by virtue of international law?
No, constitution.
Which one?
Oh.
The constitution is in the explicit legislation of constitution, item 66 of the second schedule of Nigerian constitution. It is listed as item 66.
So it will require some kind of constitutional amendments? Is that what you are saying?
Exactly. And there's no way, there's no country in this world that will say we are prescribing, a Waste and Measures law. It has never happened. This law has been there since the beginning of this country. In fact, the colonial masters, when they came, they had to, introduce Waste and Measures law and domicile it with the police department at that point in time.
So
ensure that, things, because you are talking about accountability, transparency, isn't it? You are talking about when you go to market to buy things, you are not shortchanged. That the meters they are using, the waste they are using, how are you sure it's accurate? For instance, you use this telephone today. When you use, they say you have consumed 1 minute airtime. How are you sure it's 1 minute? Or you consume this light? The power sectors will come and the operators will come and say you have kilowatts, so you have consumed your house. How are you sure those meters are working correctly? So that is the work of the Waste and Measures Department. Or you drive into forecourt to buy fuel. Who is checking those meters on your behalf?
So do you consider this as some kind of constitutional crisis, or maybe some kind of
political assault and constitutional crisis? And I believe that it must be somebody somewhere that has some agenda different from what they are telling Nigerians, and that's why we are calling on Mr. President to take a second look, because this is not something that is personal or anything at all. It's something against the interests of this country. It's not about Waste and Measures Department or about the new regulatory agencies that are put in place. It's about our nation. We can't be just seeing people, filtering our resources, and without you knowing what is happening. We're checking on your behalf. That's the question we are talking about.
Was this conversation ever raised?
It was raised on the floor of the Senate. I know that for a fact because I called some senators when that bill was about to be presented on the Senate. About 24 or 48 hours to the time they are going to the Senate was going to discuss it, and at least some senators stood up and called the attention of the Senate President to those clauses, and they asked that those clauses should be deleted, and it was deleted on the floor of the House of the Senate. So how did it find its way into the PIB that was presented to Mr. President? Who did this to us? That's the question Mr. President should ask. The records are there. The records are there of the House, of the deliberations of the Senate on that day. So they should check it.
Who is responsible for checking all of these flaws?
Mr. President's aides. And how could it be that the whole National Assembly should be taken for a ride? And somebody somewhere will go to cheat this country, to do to this country what generations unborn will not be able to cure.
You know, few weeks, I would say maybe barely a month or so after the PI was passed into law, we saw the president send that same law to the National Assembly for another amendment, considering the what do you call it now, the board members requesting an increase in the number of board members, you know, from 2 to 6 and so on and so forth. Do you think that there was diligent scrutiny of those laws before they were passed?
Those ones are cosmetics. I'm telling you, they are cosmetics. They are fundamental issues which the oil and gas sector is aware. Those people, they know what I'm talking about. What they did, all changing board members, those are cosmetics. The real issues are, do we have working meters in the industry? Does Nigeria know how much we're producing? Does Nigeria know how much we're exporting? Does Nigeria have a policy as to where to measure production? Does Nigeria know how much royalties we are paying? Do you have meters measuring your royalties, which is about 22% of your earning? Do you know how you measure your PPT, which is about another 20% about 44% of your earnings? In fact, the entire sector has to have a measuring infrastructure that will be credible, reliable. Ask NAITI, they will tell you. NAITI has 3, audits that they carried out every day to ensure transparency and accountability. The audits are, they have process audit, they have what they call fiscal audit, they have financial audit. We are talking about the process audit. If you don't have your process audit in order, there's no way your fiscal and financial audit will be garbage in, garbage out. Because process audit is about how do you measure? How do I know how much am I producing? Are the meters working? That's the process audit. And go to NAITI report, even the last one they sent out. They are still asking the government or the industry to carry out remediation that they have brought out that these meters are substandard. So those are fundamental issues. Nobody is talking about that. They're talking about cosmetic issues. How somebody can find his way into the club so that he also will participate in the looting. It's happening.
But experts are saying that the Petroleum Industry Act is a game changer. But from your explanation, it seems that there's something wrong.
It's the biggest swindle of the century that I can find against this country. The biggest swindle, and I can defend it anywhere. And internationally, everybody knows what I'm talking about.
Do we have working meters right now to determine some of the data that we see every day on our papers? We produce
I just told you there's a department by constitution that was put in place to check, to ensure that before these meters are even put to use, they have the certification of that department. And that department periodically is supposed to go there annually to check, or periodically as they deem fit, to find out, are they working in accordance with specification of manufacturers? And to also ensure that those meters are working fairly. So the issue is that you are not following the international best practice. That's the point we're making. We don't have working meters in Nigeria because there's no agency that will come and tell you this is working meters. Petroleum industry cannot tell me that what we are doing is correct, and nobody. They say trust, but verify, isn't it? We don't have the verification supposed to come from the agencies that are supposed to, which is the Waste and Measure Department I'm talking about. It's not about Waste and Measure Department, and it's not also about the issue of having. This is something else.
Okay. All right. We'll just go on a quick break now, and then when we come back, we'll just pick it up where we stop right now.
This is the spot marking signifying the starting point of the dam.
No, somebody? No, sorry. 40. No compensation has been given to any community member, and no place has been earmarked for their relocation.
Since why they go, they never come back.
And this is where the hydroelectric power dam is supposed to be constructed. But for many years, the story has remained the same. This is the site of the proposed hydroelectric power station in Mambila. But the irony is, no construction has even commenced yet.
Hear you.
All right, thank you for staying with us. In case you're just joining, you're watching Daybreak on Trust TV. And here we are talking about the recently passed PIA law. And then we have in the studio an expert who has been sharing with us his thoughts, quite insightful thoughts, I would say. And it's quite shocking to get to realize that all along we do not have concrete metering system to measure some of the data that we see every day. We hear that Nigeria produce, so and so number of barrels per day. We export so and so. How did we arrive at that?
Well, I can tell you for free that it's all guesswork. And the NITI will tell you also that it's a guesswork because I participated in the NITI audit, about 2-3 times like that. I carried out on behalf of NITI the study of the metering infrastructure in the upstream, midstream, and downstream sector. And we came up with a book, it's almost a book, a huge volume of reports that says that what you have in the industry is substandard, cannot be relied upon. In fact, there are some terminals where they don't even have anything you call meters. And they are operating. So and then you have to ask yourself, how do we even measure production? When you don't have meters at wellheads, you don't have meters at the gathering fields. Why you have meters are when when people come in to buy our crude oil who will not accept nonsense. Will now say you must have a fiscal meters because I want to know what I'm buying from you. If you don't know how much you are producing, that's your problem. That's the situation we have in Nigeria today. At the terminals, export terminals, you have what we call fiscal meters. So people coming to buy crude oil from Nigeria insist on the international best practice and the most accurate meters that you can ever find. So it's existing at the crude oil, at the export terminals, in spite of the fact that there are some infractions also going on, even with the meters. But those infractions do not affect the buyer. It affects the seller, which is Nigeria. So the question what we are talking about today is that PIA should have addressed that issue. Those are more fundamental than somebody just going to Mr. President, I want to be a member of that board, so I can also chop, partake. Believe me, that's what is happening. It should stop. Mr. President has the capacity and wherewithal to do that. He should do it for this country, for generations yet unborn. These are things that are happening. NITI can give them records if they want, if they don't want to believe me. I also carried a study for NITI, like I said, in 2009. Ribadu was also asked to go around, and I remember when Jonathan was there, to find out whether the meters are working. Ribadu came out and said the meters are substandard, they are not working. I know that the Navy also carry out studies. Senate also carry out studies. Everybody in this country knows that we are losing billions every day, and nobody is doing anything about it.
Now, talking about buying crude oil.
Yes.
According to a statement by the federal government, they said these amendments to the PIA will woo in investors into the country. Are you of that opinion as well?
To woo in investors who have been coming to the country because they know that, I'm sorry to say, but this country is one of the countries that even those organizations, the people they sent to Nigeria to do business in Nigeria are different set of people.
Okay.
Different set of people because I have interacted with them. They are different set of people. They can't do that in their countries. You know the funny thing, in their own facilities, go to Shell facilities, go to ExxonMobil facilities, go to Total facilities. These things I'm talking about are working in their facilities. Once the crude oil leaves the government unregulated environment and it comes in their facilities, they have working meters. They have online systems. They don't lose one drop of crude oil once it has become their own. But before it becomes their own, that's when this nonsense happens. And DPR and all these people that now they have changed them, just the problem has changed name, that they are now two regulatory agencies. One is upstream, midstream, and the other one is downstream and what have you. It's one and the same because the same environment still exists. That's what I'm calling Mr. President to look into. And these are very simple things. They are not rocket science. They are about, creating an environment that will ensure transparency, accountability, and good governance takes place. It matters to us as a nation.
Now, what's the implication of this, I would say, lacuna in this PIA? What's the implication of that on the goal to sanitize the oil and gas industry and all of that? It means, or it looks like, it's a dead end. Would it be right to say that?
It's not a dead end. We have a president who, by implications too, is also the Minister of Petroleum Resources. So the buck stops at his table not only as the president, but also as the minister of that industry. So he has no explanation. He has no excuse. Nothing to tell generations to come that, I didn't know about this, and I passed the bill that entrenched illegality in this country. Because it's illegality. I'm talking about international best practice. I'm talking about things that happen at the Senate. It's criminal. People behind this should be taken to the court. Before the court. They should be prosecuted. These are records that are there. I'm not saying things are not there. How do you have the audacity to even violate your own constitution? And you pass it? You pass a law that says that your constitution is of no consequence? What kind of National Assembly do we have?
Now, is there any effort by anybody to maybe approach the court over this matter? Is there any...
I'm sure some people will do. Some will do, and I know even the ministries concerned are also writing to Mr. President. I'm aware that they have called Mr. President's attention to these, inimical, action by some group, a clique in the oil and gas sector that doesn't want to rest. This has been going on since the days of Lukman. They are so adamant that they want to ensure that they legalize this illegality so that they can continue to steal this country blind. And if we allow this to happen, believe me, we'll continue to borrow until God knows when, because the money that's accrued to us will not come to us.
To go
into private pockets.
But do we hope to see any form of response, from this?
Well, I know that there are letters before Mr. President. You should ask them. Where are the letters from Federal Ministry of Trade and Investment? Where are the letters from other agencies who are calling our attention to the fact that they've been ousted from their legitimate constitutional role in the industry? And the funny thing, they allow the private individuals who they appointed to check and then burn our country from the two ends, because here we are losing to theft, and then here you have appointed those they call prescient agents. That you don't know what they are adding. They are not adding no value, but they retain the prescient agents. While you have agencies of government that should be empowered today in today's world, who does prescient agency? No, nobody does, because you have technology. Abacha introduced it because at that point in time, technology was not at the stage it is today. You can't sit in your office and know what's happening at the terminus at that point in time. Today, even people operating businesses, small businesses in motor garages, are using internet. And like I told you, the people doing business with us, once the oil leaves our facilities into their facilities, they are using these facilities.
So the beneficiaries of this, I would say, fraud are more of Nigerians than international parties. Is that correct? Or
what the Nigerians get is pittance. What they get is pittance, believe you me. It's pittance. They get nothing compared to what these international thieves are doing in stealing our crude oil through manipulation of the process, which has been brought to the attention of Mr. President. You cannot claim that I don't know. No, there's no way, because I'm aware. Mr. President cannot claim this. Minister of Justice should step in. He should step in and find out these laws. How do we wake up? How do we end up with really, turning the pyramid on its head completely in terms of transparency and accountability? Because these are laws. These are things that are written there. It's not something that somebody is imagining or something like that. And it's so pedestrian that I can see. If before I have people checking me, and I say I want accountability and transparency, then I now say no, nobody should check what I'm doing. Nobody should check. I don't have any problems with DPR, PPRA, PF being proscribed or being subsumed. It's okay. We want a very sound, strong, regulatory agency in that place. But allow other agencies, as even the principle of civil service says it. You as an agency cannot, on your own, start a business and end it from production to selling, and no other agency of government can come and check. What are you doing? Is this your father's money?
So how do we checkmate this fishy activities going on?
Mr. President should do it. It's a legislative bill, isn't it? It's a legislative bill. Mr. President should send a bill, an amendment to that bill to the National Assembly.
That amendment has been sent already. Are you saying that
the amendment sent is for people to get into the club, to be a member of board, and this one, which is cosmetics, which is just nothing. That has nothing to do with fundamentals we're talking about. The fundamental issues are, how do we ensure that you have meters who are working? How do we ensure accountability, transparency, checks and balances in that sector? How do we ensure that generations that are born are not swindled the way we are swindled today? We are where we are today because the pre-PIA environment was all commerce. Everything was happening in that sector, and more so will happen now because they have been legalized by the National Assembly. Stealing has been legalized against this country.
What role will the international community play in this issue of Western measures, department and all of that? Is there any role that they can play to influence maybe certain decisions?
Of course, there's a role they can play, but you can't be, how do you say it, more, you can't cry more than the bereaved, isn't it?
Right.
And if he knows and they say it's turn blind eye, so, all that, what the International Commission can do already, the ministries under the same government are crying out. So before you even go to international community, the same ministries are crying out that this is murder of the interest of this country. Mr. President should please do something, step in. That's all they're saying. And they're not saying it for themselves. For how long would they be in that ministry in any case? They're talking about Nigeria, the future of this country. Oil is the future of this country for now, until all the other efforts, come to fruition, and then to replace oil. But for a long time, it's going to be a very relevant part of our economy. So what we are saying, some of us are saying, is that do the right thing. That's all we are saying.
All right, talk to us about the impact of this PIA on oil and gas exports permit, and all of that. Do you see that there's any impact there?
Well, there used to be impact, but now that two laws have been violated here. Act of Parliaments, 2 Act of Parliaments. One is the PIE, that is the one that's the petroleum export, the one you're talking about. You have a department under Federal Ministry of Trade and Investment that issues out export permit to buyers of crude oil and gas from this country. And this came on board in when we had structural adjustment program. You can imagine, since that time. So they instituted, even though they prescribe export license and things like that, but they believe that there's a need to check what is happening in the oil and gas sector. We can't leave it open like that, even though we are saying, when they abolished export license and things like that, if you remember. So even at that time, they recognize the fact that oil and gas sector is too important to just say anybody can do whatever you like. So the export permit issuance was not given to oil and gas sector, NNPC or wherever, to issue, because they wanted to introduce accountability, transparency, and good governance. It was domiciled with Federal Ministry of Trade and Investment at that point in time. So how do you now wake up in today's development and everything and say, no, we don't want anybody to come and check us again? It doesn't make sense. So what it has done is that it has violated the constitution of this country. That's all, and for the interest of some few that are there who today are thinking that Mr. President does not know, or nobody knows what they are trying to do to this country.
So would you say the House of Representatives is performing its oversight function?
Well, I think the National Assembly as a whole, yes, they are performing their oversight functions, but Fifth colonists are there. There are people that have infiltrated, that hollow chambers. Otherwise, there is no way. If you didn't know, as Mr. President or Senate President, you didn't know how inimical a clause is in a bill you are about to pass, and one of your senators stood up and said, "Sir, I'm calling your attention to this clause. It's inimical to the interests of this country," and you say, "Delete it." It was deleted. Again, the following day, when you are submitting your bill to Mr. President, the same clause that you deleted, have now been brought back into the bill. So, yes, they are performing their oversight functions, but there are some influence in those places that are against the interests of this country. That's all we are saying. And we cannot, some of us cannot allow that kind of thing to happen against this country.
So would you say there is a kind of a political fair play going on?
Corruption. It's not political fair play. It's corruption. It's not about APC or PDP or anything. These ones they are not even politicians. Those ones that are pushing this kind of bills, a scheme to rob this country forever, of its fortunes. It's not about politics. These are interest groups. These are interest groups. And I remember in 70s, there was a bill passed by the United Nations. I can't remember the number now, but the United Nations warned developing countries about these international companies coming to do business, especially extractive industries, that they should be careful. These ones are coming for profit. They don't have your interest at all. Their interest is profit. How they can maximize profit. So be on the watch out. So you're talking about what international organization can do. United Nations came out with this warning at that time. They said these companies coming to your countries, they are not coming for your development. They are coming for their interest because that's what they are set up to do.
So do you think that there's some kind of conspiracy or some kind of connivance with some Nigerians and some international
Definitely. They cannot do it alone. They cannot do it alone. But the painful aspect is that today we said a bill that took 22 years to come to fruition, to become a law, will end up being a kind of policy somersault, being the worst bill against the interests of the country. The worst.
Could this be the same reason why it dragged for this long? And would you say that the passing of the bill is just a political goal?
Exactly. That's why they were filibustering the bill for as long as it took. Until Nigerians now woke up and say, wait, no, please, something should be done about this bill. Everybody was talking. It's just like the electoral bill. The Nigerians, in their thousands, every angle of everybody was saying that this bill must be, that e-transmission of results must be. So unfortunately, Nigerians are not aware of this one. For them to make as much noise as possible. And this is more important than even, it's also as important because it's about the economy. It's about our resources, our future for now.
Right. So before we wrap up the discussion, do you see a future for investment in oil industry in Nigeria?
Well, you see, there are two kinds of investors. There are investors that are looking for the kind of environment you have created now. That's what they are looking for. It's not any other thing. There are investors like that all over the world. So they will come in droves and give you the billions. But they are taking out trillions. And there are investors that would like to have a sane environment, where they know that whatever they invest, they're earning their entitlement, not taking anything, that does not belong to them. So all over the world, there are investors. And I'm sorry that most of the investors we have had in this country, especially in that sector you're talking about, belong to the other group. Unfortunately, because I know we've had engagement with them when legal methodology was to be given the teeth that it's supposed to have, and I know the kind of reactions we had. They say over their dead body that this law cannot take place. Traders dictating to the country, and truly it happened. The law did not find was not able to operate. And nobody could tell Mr. President. So the issue is that this problem we have today definitely, the issue can be solved by one person in this country, Mr. President. His aides should talk to them. The Minister of Justice, the Attorney General of Federation, Minister of Justice, should please step in and do something for Nigeria by saving us, future generations yet unborn.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. We've been speaking with Engineer Yabagi Yusuf Sani, energy and crude oil experts, and also National Chairman, Action Democratic Party. Thank you for coming on the show this morning.
You're welcome.
We hope to have you
and
next
sharing
time.
this deep insight with us.
Thank you, Robert.
Yes. All right. We'll be going on a quick break, and then when we come back, the show will be rounding up. Please stay with us.
Well, welcome back. Well, with the discussion, we've come to the end of Daybreak for today. I hope you had an insightful, breakdown of that. It's quite shocking to get to hear some of the things our guest just mentioned.
Yeah, very, very shocking, really. Just tells you the level of and the height of corruption, seem to have been institutionalized, in Nigeria. And it's appalling. We hope that the persons responsible to take the needed action, do so. Otherwise, I believe that if going by what we have heard, then it's counterproductive. It's counterproductive to have this PIA. We've been talking about how relevant the PIA is to sanitizing the oil and gas industry, to bring in transparency and accountability and all of that. But when you hear things like this about not having, a functional meter that could even measure certain critical aspects of the oil and gas industry, then you ask yourself, what are we doing really?
It was shocking to me to hear what our guest just finished saying. It's shocking to know that there's so much stealing going on in the oil and gas industry.
Yeah, there is quite, very, very high level of, theft going on, really. Well, with that, we've come to the end of the show. But before we round up, finally, let's take a look at sports in 60 seconds. Of course, we'll always bring you, up to speed with what's happening in the sporting world.
Hello, welcome to Trust Sports in 60 seconds. Former Empoli and Palermo player Gianluca Astori has stated that Napoli striker Victor Osimhen reminds him of younger Edison Cavani, who also spent time for the Naples club. And Super Eagles midfielder Wilfred Ndidi is Leicester City's most valuable player, according to reputable football statistic website Transfer Market. The Nigerian was valued at 60 million euros as of October 8, 2021, with Belgian midfielder Yuri Telemann coming second at 55 million euros, while Turkish defender Salah Soyuncu was third at 45 million euros. Bayern Munich defender Lucas Hernandez has until October 28 to enter prison voluntarily after he appeared before a Madrid court on Monday for violating a restraining order in 2017. And finally, England must play their next home match in a UEFA competition behind closed doors following disorder at the Euro 2020 final at Wembley. And that's all the top headlines on Trust Sports in 60 seconds. Don't forget to subscribe, like and follow us across all social media platforms.
All right, with that, we wrap up the Daybreak on Trust Television, reaching you from the nation's capital. It's been a very, very interesting conversation. In case you are just joining and you have missed, then you can catch up on our social media handles and also subscribe to our YouTube channel for latest news, updates, and many other programs. My name is Ayuba Ilya. Join us again tomorrow.
And I am Zainab Bala. Thank you so much for sticking with us.
Bye.